As you enter the park from the visitor center, across from the Gold Star Families Memorial on your left, you will see a series of pavers that briefly highlight some of the worst dictators in modern history that our world has ever known. It needs to be realized what can happen when societies embrace communism and socialism at the expense of our democracy and our republic. The next paver you encounter is titled Tyrants. The 20th century atrocities are reminders of governments and political philosophies that we as a nation must continually strive to avoid. These atrocities are also reminders of the strength, character, and service of the U.S. military veterans who have protected our freedom. These and other atrocities, along with the human toll taken as a result of democide in non-democratic countries during the 20th century, resulted in the tragic deaths of over 262 million civilians worldwide. The persecution of Christians continues with over 44 million people killed outside of the United States during the 20th century due to their Christian beliefs. With the continuation of Christian persecutions, Christianity is at a risk of disappearing in many countries. This unfortunate fact is a reminder of the importance of our First Amendment right to the freedom of religion. It is also a reminder of the significance of those who have served this country to protect all rights guaranteed by the Constitution. The next paper is about Mao Zedong, China's Communist Revolution from 1946 through 1976. During his first 5 years, from 1949 to 1953, he is said to have systematically killed between 4 to 6 million people by sentencing them to die or by sending them to reform through labor camps. He organized mass repressions, established execution quotas, and defended his actions in these early years as necessary for securing power for the People's Republic of China. During his 30-year tyrannical communist rule, it is estimated that over 45 million Chinese civilians perished. The next paper you encounter is about Joseph Stalin, formerly the Communist Soviet Union. Stalin was the first secretary of the Communist Party from 1922 to 1953. After Lenin's death in 1924, he became the leader of the Soviet Union. His communist policies purposely caused 10 million deaths in the Ukraine due to famine and starvation in 1922 and 1923. During the late 1930s, Stalin launched another initiative called the Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror. It was a campaign to eliminate the people who opposed him. Over his 31-year tyrannical rule, over 23 million civilians perished. The next paper highlights Adolf Hitler, the fascist dictator of Nazi Germany from 1934 through 1945. It is estimated that Nazis killed over 30 million people: men, women, handicapped, aged, sick, prisoners of war, forced laborers, camp inmates, critics, homosexuals, Jews, Slavs, Serbs, Germans, Czechs, Italians, Poles, French, Ukrainians, and more in prisoner of war and concentration or death camps. It is estimated that the Nazis killed 7% of the population in every country they occupied during World War II. Hitler's anti-Semitism is responsible for the genocide of over 6 million Jews. After the Hitler paper, we come to Emperor Hirohito of Japan, the military regime of Japan from 1926 through 1989. Under Emperor Hirohito, the Imperial Japanese Army and the Imperial Japanese Navy committed numerous war crimes, which resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Some historical estimates of the number of deaths which resulted from Japanese war crimes totaled 14 million people. Through massacre, human experimentation, starvation, and forced labor that was either directly perpetrated or condoned by the Japanese military and government. After the Japanese surrender on September 2, 1945, he was allowed to remain emperor as a figurehead with no political power. This was done to obtain the surrender of Japan to secure compliance with that surrender by Japan's armed forces and the reconstruction of Japan after the war. The next paper we encounter is about Pol Pot of the Khmer Rouge, who ruled over extreme communist Cambodia from 1975 through 1979. It is estimated 2.5 million Cambodians died from execution, starvation, or disease. That's almost a third of the population of 7,500,000 people. He started the killing fields, which encompassed the country, with more than 20,000 mass grave sites containing more than 1,380,000 bodies. His reign was made possible because of the support of communist dictator Mao Zedong, who supplied him with 90% of the weapons and funds to carry out the genocide of his people. His reign ended when the Vietnamese military invaded, toppling his regime of terror. It should also be noted that on April 30th, 1975, the last American soldiers left Vietnam. The next paver we encounter is about Idi Amin, the fascist dictator of Uganda from 1971 through 1979. General Amin overthrew the elected president, Milton Obote, and declared himself president of Uganda. He launched a ruthless 8-year reign of terror with the massacre of over 500,000 civilians. In 1972, he expelled all foreign citizens of Indian, Asian, and Pakistani descent, causing an economic collapse that lasted for decades. He also persecuted and murdered Christians. In 1979, his reign of terror came to an end as Ugandan exiles and Tanzanians took control of the capital of Kampala, forcing Amin to flee. He was never brought to justice for his heinous crimes. Amin lived out the remainder of his life in Saudi Arabia. The strength and integrity of the U.S. democracy has also protected the United States from these additional atrocities. Ismail Pasha, Ottoman Turkey, 1915 through 1920. 2 million Americans, Greeks, and Assyrians killed. Kim Il-sung, North Korea, from 1948 to 1994. At least 1.6 million people killed through famine. Mengistu Mariam, Ethiopia, 1987 through 1991. 1.5 million Eritrean political opponents. Akabu Gowon, Nigeria, 1967 through 1970. 1 million Biafrans starved and soldiers killed in the Civil War. Saddam Hussein, Iraq, 1979 to 2003. 600,000 Shiites, Kurds, Kuwaitis, and political opponents killed. Josip Tito, Yugoslavia, 1945 through 1980. 570,000 political opponents killed. Benito Mussolini, Italy, 1922 through 1945. 250,000 Ethiopians, Libyans, Jews, and political opponents killed. Fidel Castro, Cuba, 1959 through 2006. 30,000 political opponents killed. Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran, 1979 through 1989. 20,000 political religious opponents killed.